Welcome to episode number 7 of Take 47 podcast. I haven't recorded a video in a while. Uh, I'm not feeling great currently, and I haven't really gotten myself to record in a bit. So there's quite a lot of news to cover, and I'll try to cover today like what's a good amount of this has been in the main news, mainstream. Some of it hasn't, and I'll try to get deeper into what hasn't been so common on the news. It's still very important, very significant for the U.S. and NATO and the Middle East. But today we'll really be centering around the Middle East and Asia. So, welcome to episode 7. So, starting off with Trump and China, or the U.S. and China. After meeting in Geneva with his counterpart, the Treasury Secretary Besant got to a deal with China to reduce tariffs by 115% on each side. So now the U.S. has a 30% tariff on China, and China has a 10% tariff on us. And I'm recording this video Tuesday, so Tuesday pretty late at night, or pretty late in the afternoon. But I believe Monday, when the markets opened, the stocks just blew up. Everything went up because of the trade. It was a 90-day pause. So on that 90-day pause, Trump said that they'll probably, most likely, work out a deal with China, and if for some reason they can't work out a deal in 90 days, the tariffs would go back up. But Trump said that on our side, at least, he wouldn't slap anything higher to a total of 90%. So including the fentanyl tariffs and a few other tariffs, plus a reciprocal, it wouldn't add up to more than 90%. Now, China, we'd have to see how they would respond. But I don't think they would also want to pressure us too much, considering that their economy has taken a big hit these past 2 months or month and a half, at least since Liberation Day. But I think we can all agree that China might have lost this trade war. It's definitely not over, but China definitely blinked first, and the U.S. is still holding strong, and we'll see what they can negotiate in these 90 days of the reciprocal tariff pause. And this is happening today, Tuesday, or whenever you're watching this. But Trump went to Saudi Arabia earlier. He left yesterday, and I believe he landed either early today or late yesterday. It's a different time zone, so I'm not very clear on what the times are, at least in comparison. But Trump today signed a deal with the Saudi Arabian prince, MBS Mohammed bin Salman, on trade. He will invest. Well, Saudi Arabia will invest $20 billion into U.S. technology and AI, and the U.S. will sell $142 billion in weapons to Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia, like me personally, as somebody who enjoys politics, geopolitics, and history, Saudi Arabia is easily the most prosperous and rich country in the Middle East, right? They're very successful, mostly in part because of they were just naturally blessed with the land that they got, tons and tons and tons of oil and natural resources, which the world really relies on them, and a few other countries, Russia, Venezuela, but the U.S. specifically relies pretty directly in Saudi Arabia, and it's great because they're willing to, be partners with us, and they're not playing tough ball. They're, you know, they want to have good negotiations with the U.S. Pretty straightforward and simple, nothing too complicated. And other than, you know, in comparison to other Islamic countries and other Middle Eastern countries, with the exclusion of really Israel, and that's pretty much it. But they they aren't extremists in their religion, and um, they're they have their limitations, and you know, like what the proper limits of their religion are. And you know, like Iraq and Pakistan and all these other Middle Eastern countries, Muslim countries, they're spreading or trying to spread Islam by the sword. And I mean, that's kind of what happened with the Crusades also. But you know, before the Crusades were the Europe trying to take back the Holy Land. But if you look throughout history, and even now, they're trying to spread their religion by the sword. They're not. The difference between them and Christianity, you don't have to kill anybody, or you know, hold a gun or sword to their neck to make them, you know, convert to your religion. Because it's very different in obviously how the Bible and the Quran were written to kill the non-believer. And I mean, in the Bible, you have to convert others, and not you. They have to convert to you, and not you to them, which is very different. And Jesus did it in a peaceful way. Muhammad led the I forget the word that they used to describe a holy war. I can't think of it right now, but jihad, I believe is the word that Muhammad used, and that's really what they used before the Crusades for about like 600 years, before before Europe unified and took back or attempted to take that back the Holy Land, and there were multiple Crusades. But yeah, Saudi Arabia is a very prosperous country. I was watching earlier the broadcast of President Trump and MBS speaking at the investment forum, and very beautiful place. They have a very unique culture. Definitely the most, or at least one of the most beautiful countries in the Arabian Peninsula. But the order that was signed between Trump and MBS was the $142 billion in weapons that we're going to give to them, and they're going to invest $20 billion in our markets. But obviously, that's not the only thing that's going to be signed. They want to sign more things, and so does Trump. We want to make at least 600 billion. Well, make $600 billion in investments official. They want to invest in our markets, which is kind of like a Trump effect. Nobody really invested under Biden. Now we have all the top AI companies, Apple, Amazon, and some car companies also in other countries, very rich countries, investing in America, trying to grow their businesses here. And that's not only because of the tariffs, but because they know that in the long run, it's really going to benefit them more. And that's really what Trump is trying to do. He's trying to force the companies slowly but surely to move back into the U.S., which not only increases jobs, but it also increases tax revenue and many other things. And that would also take some pressure off of other countries with tariffs. Which would really facilitate all the trade worldwide, which is, I think, that some people in the Trump administration want, and obviously some others want to generate tariffs. It's still a mystery as to where Trump stands in all this. He's a little bit of all these categories, but Yeah, the more of a hidden purpose, other than obviously we want to grow a country. This 90-day tariff pause with China is we're obviously going to be negotiating with China, and we obviously want leverage, just like the Russia wants leverage against Ukraine, or Ukraine wants leverage against Russia. But we obviously want the most leverage we can, so we can put the most pressure and ask for the highest amount of money or profit or efficiency that we can. But we're trying to pressure China into a corner by really just cutting them off, or taking the first bite out of what every country has to offer. And we're not really leaving China with much of a chance to fight back the U.S. in a trade war, even though they're trying to partner more and more strongly with their Asian partners. And obviously, Trump is trying to do it worldwide, but he's also taking some countries that are in Asia, like India. Obviously, J.D. Vance went to India with Modi to have some trade negotiations, and us joining up with India would be a huge blow to China, because if we can move all the manufacturing from China to India, not only would that help India, but that would also weaken China. So really everything, like absolutely everything that Trump does has a balance. There's a balance. It's like a pie. Only somebody can have a majority of the pie. So when India gets more manufacturing, that means like that one other country's going to lose it, whether it may be China or Europe or the US. But if you can move things into India temporarily to have even more leverage against China, it's a great thing to do, because eventually we will bring the manufacturing to the US, which, I mean, it's great for all the reasons I previously mentioned. But it's a good way to start pulling all the money back into the U.S. for investing and growing all the companies. But yeah, I really just talked about all the benefits that the U.S. would gain from this, and from other trade deals. But I didn't really talk about what the Saudis would gain from this. And also Trump, just a little side note, Trump is on a 4-day trip, I believe, in the Middle East. He might stop in Turkey because Putin and Zelensky have some peace talks in Turkey, to see what they can get done with the war, if they can get done, hopefully as soon as possible. But Trump might stop by. It's not official yet, and we're still waiting to see if any of the two sides want Trump to be there, or if Trump wants to be there. We're still not very clear on that. But eventually, like, once somebody speaks out, I'll probably make a short about it, or try to inform you, or it'll just be included in a video. But yeah, what do the Saudis gain from this? So obviously they invested money into our tech companies, but we want to give them some of our technology and make stronger bonds with the Saudis in technology and weaponry and energy and aerospace and artificial intelligence. Lots of other very good grounds for investing, especially because they're recent and they're always evolving, always something new. It's a very constant market, always going up, usually going up. Obviously, changed a little bit with the Trump tariffs, but other than that, it's really been on the rise for years. Only really a few big blows to some of those industries, but they're quite rare. But in general, they're pretty stable markets, and lots of money getting poured into them by so many countries. And obviously China has their own little separate competition with the U.S. with I believe DeepSeek. But the U.S. is still number one. We have the Chat GPT and Grok and a few others, and we're still leading in AI. But the Trump actually brought along about 35 people, or somewhere in the 30s. But he brought along a good amount of people who specialize in obviously these fields of AI, and some others specialize with investing. He brought along Musk, Zuckerberg, the CEO of Amazon, the CEO of Nvidia, the co-founder of LinkedIn, Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, a very, very successful investing company. I'll probably talk about that company specifically and more in other videos. They're really interesting, actually. They have so much money and tons of influence and tons of things going on around the world, not just in the U.S. Obviously, they got like a $10 trillion net worth, and that's about a third of the U.S. Debt, which is really crazy. Super rich, super duper rich company. They specialize in investing. But yeah, they brought along lots of other big names. Obviously to, share and have the Saudis invest into their companies and get some profit out of that and some technology. And I mean, it's a great benefit for both countries. We get money and they get technology and weapons and a few other things to help them help them maintain their peace through strength against all these other extremist Islamic terrorist countries. Talking about extremists and terrorists and Islamic countries, not really a country, more of a terrorist organization or terror group, really resistance group, but they're terrorist. The PKK, the Kurdish Workers' Party, I believe is called, dissolved, I believe, a few days ago. This hasn't, I don't think it has been in the mainstream media. I haven't seen much of it, or, I mean, I just saw it mentioned a little. I didn't, see much of it on Fox, CNN, NBC, or whatever the real mainstream is, whatever you watch. But yeah, I decided to investigate take some time and investigate into this, see what the PKK really is. I've heard of them before. I know that they're obviously based in the Middle East, like pretty much all terrorist organizations. They all root from there. They're all Islamic, which the connection is surprising sometimes. Not really, not surprising. Surprising to nobody. But yeah, they're based in the Middle East. They're in the First World War after the Ottoman Empire. By the way, it's a group of people. They're really called Kurdistan, but I believe they were never officially a country. But they got conquered by the Ottoman Empire, which after losing in the First World War, got its territory kind of sliced up by the winners of the First World War, Italy, France, and I believe, I'm not sure if Russia was involved or if it was France, but they got the Ottoman territory kind of sliced up, and they kind of were trying to negotiate who was going to keep what part of which territory. But in the end, they wanted to promote the Kurdish people to form their own country and to be recognized as an independent and sovereign country. But what ended up happening was that the new head of the Turkish government, I forget his name, he really didn't like that. He didn't want to give the Kurdish people a voice or a country or any significance. So he managed to push out the Europeans out of that little. It's really right under modern day Turkey, including a bit of Syria, Iran, Iraq, and I believe Armenia. But he pushed them out, and eventually, when Syria, Iraq, and Iran, and really Armenia, but I won't really mention Armenia in this topic because they're not really a big factor in this whole topic of the PKK. But they split off in several different into several different countries, obviously, because it was obviously way easier for the Kurds to remain as one group or as one region of people, if that's how you would say it, if they're like within a single country. But once they got split off into 5 countries, it was obviously not so easy, especially because some of these countries went to war with each other and used the Kurds in proxy wars. Obviously, the Soviet Union tried to help the Kurds and have a little bit of an uprising in Iraq when the U.S. and the U.K. were in Iraq. So they kind of try to make a proxy war there. It didn't work out. They weren't really strong enough. They didn't have enough support behind their backs to make any significance in the against the U.S. and the U.K. But these people have been really used as pawns, and they've been used for proxy wars. Mostly really the U.S., but obviously some other countries just promise to them that we're gonna team up, and after we win, you're gonna get a voice. You're gonna become an independent country. What you want will be done. And after the war ends, or after the U.S. or the other country meets their goal, they kind of back out, and the Kurds never really achieve anything. And in the 1980s, they formed the PKK, which is the Kurdish Workers' Party, which is a terrorist group. They really formed this terrorist group to fight off, or really to hurt Turkey. Of course, yeah, really only Turkey. Their intention was to hurt Turkey and to use to get support from other countries in that region. Obviously Syria, Iraq, Iran, but they really only got support from Syria once. And once Turkey threatened to invade Syria, Syria just expelled all the PKK from their country. But yeah, they've always tried to have some stronger support to. They've always had this. They've always tried to have some strong support, some strong militia, to have some effect in Turkey. But of course, this never actually really worked out because they never actually became strong enough. And the change of the U.S. presidents obviously in the U.S. Really changed their entire situation. When Barack Obama left office and Trump came in, obviously Trump wanted to pull out of the Middle East because he didn't want us in any more wars or stupid wars against countries for really no reason. Trump obviously destroyed ISIS in a few weeks. Didn't take him long. He was talking about that earlier in the investment forum, where all the Saudis were in with MBS, But yeah, in general, the point about this is that they got not eradicated. They disbanded some time ago, like very recently. Um, and I haven't really seen this in the mainstream, so I decided to cover this. Johnny Harris did a pretty detailed video on the Kurds and Kurdistan and all that. He's a journalist. His videos are amazing quality, great production. But the really main criticism is that he likes to cut off a lot of corners to make it simple, but sometimes he cuts off too many corners and he gets some things wrong and obviously misleads people. I don't know if that's on purpose. I doubt it is. But it's really great content to watch, great quality and all that. But he did a great video on that. If you can watch that if you would like to understand more. And a few other of his videos have to do with the Middle East, explaining relationships between countries and the terrorist groups and organizations like the PKK, ISIS, and Hamas, and a few others. But yeah, the PKK disbanded. Okay, and as I said earlier in the video, Zelensky, Putin, and possibly Trump are going to meet in Turkey. I believe it's Istanbul, with the head of the Turkish government to have some sort of peace talks for the Russia-Ukraine war. And this comes after Ukraine spent, I believe, Saturday with the Coalition of the Willing, which is composed of the UK, France, Poland, Germany, and Ukraine. And really this was formed after the Zelensky and Trump scandal in the White Office. That little mess. But yeah, it was really formed after that, because what most of the world perceived from that hour-long meeting between the presidents was that the U.S. was going to start cutting off funds to Ukraine and try to dry out the war. So Europe decided to make coalition to pour more fuel on the fire, and this coalition met on Saturday to offer Putin an ultimatum to either accept a 30-day unconditional ceasefire or to face massive sanctions from those 5 countries. And Trump, I believe, replied on this, talked about this either today or yesterday. I believe it was yesterday, actually. Depending on what happens Thursday, or if he can talk something out, depends if the U.S. will impose sanctions on Russia. But I highly doubt that Trump will try to pressure Russia that way. It's probably easier to just negotiate without imposing tariffs or sanctions or anything that might anger Russia, or really it won't really even affect Russia, because they don't really have, they're not exactly China. They're not a economic powerhouse. Their economy, as I said, I believe last video or 2 videos ago, is really like on steroids. It's not on steroids. It's on adrenaline from this war, because once the war stops, the economy of Russia should really just plummet. It should really just hit the ground. Because after the war ends, obviously they're gonna have to replenish their stocks and their supplies. Hopefully, well, not hopefully, obviously we don't want that if they do end up going to war with the U.S., but to replenish their stocks, because really all that they have, or most of the things that they have used, are old Soviet Union weapons, tanks and missiles and tons of outdated garbage, which hasn't really worked super well in this war. If they would have had more advanced technology and tanks and missiles and all that, I believe they would have made much greater progress into Ukraine. If Ukraine, which so far it has, decides to say yes, because so far they said yes to everything Trump has proposed, or really to most of the things, and Russia's just demanding too much. If they continue to say yes and yes and yes, and Russia just keeps on saying no, the U.S. might eventually just get tired of Russia and give Ukraine not only weapons to defend itself, but they might actually just give Ukraine weapons to really hurt Russia and fight back and maybe even take back all the land that they have lost, and maybe even get into some Russian land. But I really doubt that the U.S. would like to escalate the war. Not what President Trump was elected for. Obviously, he made a campaign promise that he would try to end all the wars, and he wants his presidency to be a peaceful presidency. He doesn't want any wars to start or to keep these wars going. Obviously, it's blessed are the peacemakers, and I mean he showed that very efficiently with India and Pakistan when they brokered the deal in really days. That was very efficient and very quick, and obviously I don't think World War III would have started because of that little conflict, but obviously we didn't want that to escalate and more people to lose lives. Okay, and now moving on to another country that is in technically war, not against another country, but against a terror group, Israel, obviously. The Israeli government, kind of funny what happened actually. Thankfully no people were hurt, everybody's fine. But the Israeli government, you know what, I'm not going to start from there. Obviously, I believe most of us, or a good handful of us, know who Greta Thunberg is. The child actor who abandoned everything just to become a mindless woke lib who we all know her from the How Dare You clip at the United Nations for the climate change conference.
How dare you!
And after she dropped that hoax, she decided to move on to being very pro-Hamas and pro-Palestine, anti-Israel. And after Israel a few days ago approved a plan to take over Gaza officially, which I believe the U.S. isn't backing or will not back. After Israel approved that, she and two other activists tried to send a ship to Gaza with humanitarian aid. Obviously, humanitarian aid. But even though I do sort of genuinely believe that they are trying to help the people there, what I think that the Liberal Party, Democrat Party, and all the Democrats don't understand is that, yes, there are 2 million Palestinians living in Gaza, but what they don't understand is that within those 2 million Palestinians, there are tons and tons and tons of terrorists from Hamas, and obviously some other terrorist organizations, but the main one is Hamas, because they keep on getting sponsored by Iraq, which got a lot of money under the Biden presidency because he was so ineffective. And after Trump just came in quite recently, obviously they're trying to negotiate the nuclear trade deal, the nuclear deal with Iraq. Obviously, we don't want to trade nuclear weapons. But after Trump is currently trying to negotiate that, obviously, but Iraq, we're really just gonna have to find a way to make them stop funding all these terrorist groups against Israel. Of course, they hate Israel. Israel hates Iraq, and they always, they're always threatening each other. Iraq indirectly is attacking Israel through all these terrorist groups, which they fund constantly with missiles through underground tunnels and money and many other things, right? ISIS was, I believe, based in Syria, but they might have still gotten money from Iraq. Obviously, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So, I mean, even if they don't get along so perfectly, they can still just team up together to get on Israel. But yeah, going back to Greta, after that ship that she tried to send, I believe it was still in the dock, so it hadn't officially been sent. It was struck by 2 drones, which left 2 giant holes on the ship and set it on fire. And the very, very funny part about this is the name of the ship, which is named Conscience. It's very terrible for them, but if they keep electing and keep following all these terror groups, which really isn't helping them, then I mean, we can't really do much about it. We're allied with Israel, and so are the Saudis also, and many other countries are also allied with Israel, and many other countries hate Israel. But we just have to support our allies and make sure that they stay safe, obviously. We trade with India to hurt China. We trade with the Saudis for they get weapons, we get technology. And with Israel, we get some technologies and a few other things, and they get weapons and support and military assistance from the U.S. Because without the U.S., I believe Israel wouldn't really stand much of a chance against any of these terrorist groups, because eventually they would collapse, because Iraq is much bigger than Israel. They could keep funding all these terrorist groups, and so many countries hate Israel that if the U.S. were to back off from Israel, all the other countries would take their chance and just strike and be done with all that. But the U.S. isn't backing off. Obviously, Trump isn't going to follow along with everything that Netanyahu wants to do, because we don't want to drag ourselves into another war with Iraq or any country, because it's unnecessary. It's very easily preventable. There's absolutely no need for this war. Nobody wants to go to war with Iraq, at least nobody in the U.S. But it's very easily preventable to go to war with that country. We can just have some negotiations with them on their nuclear programs and with Israel, because obviously we don't want to make them suffer. We, as Trump said, we want them to be a prosperous and rich and beautiful country, but we can't have them have a nuclear weapon, because they cannot be trusted in difference to Israel or the Saudis or many other countries, which know their limits and are willing to because we really just won't trust Iraq with a nuclear weapon, because they don't know their limits and they won't really stop to anything, and they're just too dangerous to wield a nuclear weapon. It's too harmful for a country that's willing to do so much harm. It's too harmful for a country that wants to do so much harm. And finally, well, not finally, we have one more topic after this one. But Trump on Monday signed an executive order to make Big Pharma reduce the cost of uh, prescription drugs by 30 to 80%. And I believe the policy is called most favored country or most favored nation. Uh, I believe Trump had this in his first term. I wasn't really into politics back then, so I don't know, but some like research says it that he did have it in his first term. Obviously, now we have RFK and some more experienced people in the Trump cabinet dealing with the health, um, the health departments and all that. But after Trump signed that, we should have a 30 to 80% decrease in prices for prescription drugs. But this shouldn't really, like, they will go down, but Trump said that he will eventually impose tariffs on on pharmaceutical products from other countries. Um, I believe China is a very big manufacturer of those products, and in Trump's first term, he won Puerto Rico, my home country, not really country, territory. That's where I'm from. I was born there. But he wants Puerto Rico to manufacture them instead of China, which is much more beneficial. Obviously, they're a U.S. territory. We're very close to each other. It's much easier to transport things from Puerto Rico straight to the U.S. instead of having to go through the entire Pacific Ocean or the Suez Canal or whatever routes they take to transport all that. But in general, why did Trump do this? Because the U.S. are about, I believe, 4% of the global population. I'm trying to do some quick math. Yeah, we're about 4% of the global population, I believe. We have a little over 300 million people. Some of those which are illegal migrants, but they're still people in our country. We're about 4%-ish of the global population, yet we are 70% of the profits for all these pharmaceutical companies which sell prescription drugs. And kind of a funny clip, I'll actually end up putting it up in the video, probably at the end or something. But President Trump decided to introduce this executive order in a quite hilarious way. Starting off by talking about his fat friend. Kind of a funny way to introduce this. Obviously, many other more establishment politicians would be like, oh, well, we want to reduce the cost of this and cost of that because we're totally against lobbying, right? But yeah, Trump introduced this in a very Trump way. Kind of funny. I'll put the clip at the end. But yeah, they really abuse the U.S. because they sell products like 10 times more expensive in the U.S. And in other countries, they sell these products at much cheaper prices. Like in the part of the story that Trump was sharing with the media and the press had to do with the one of his friends. I won't get into that. I'll leave you to watch the clip. But whatever that medication was in the UK cost like $80 for that injection, or $160 or something. And then in the US it costs like $1,600. So it's like exponentially scaled. And Trump signed that order to use the power of the government to make them reduce the costs if they don't do it by themselves. But we should be getting the same price, the lowest price possible. So if in the suppose that France has the lowest price for Tylenol, an example, not a prescription drug, but it can be. But if Tylenol costs $10 in the United Kingdom and costs $200 here, and the United Kingdom is the cheapest is the country that has Tylenol the cheapest, then we're going to be getting it at that price until further notice, which is a great way to keep the pharma lobby, checked, to make sure that kind of start reducing their power. Something that RFK is really big on. Obviously, something that Bernie Sanders, fight the oligarchy, really sucks at. And finally, the Democrats might have actually been right about something for once. So, in the Trump has talked about a big beautiful bill for a very long time, since his election campaign, where he wants to pass like all the big tax cuts and all the big cuts in government, official cuts in government, and all the no taxes on this, no taxes on that. He wants to do a lot of things on that specific bill. It's all going to be one big bill. And obviously, this isn't just a way to like make the Democrats who don't vote for that bill, who vote against it, to make them look bad, because obviously the bill is going to have some things that they don't like tax cuts and a few other things, but it's also going to have some very good things, like cutting government waste and a few other pretty good things that you can't really argue against, but because it's Trump, they really have to. It's like in their blood or something. But Trump, in that big beautiful bill that he's been talking about, said that he might actually, not him, the House Republicans proposed to cut about $880 billion to cut them from Medicaid to afford the $4.5 trillion tax cuts. And about Medicaid, there are about 70 million Americans that are on Medicaid. The Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office gave an estimate that about 8.6 million Americans would lose Medicaid over a decade, so over 10 years. So from now until 2035, and I really doubt it will be 8.6. It might actually remain the same as it is now, or it might actually grow more. This is because even though that number might go down, we obviously have, or actually no, it could go down, because we have obviously the tax cuts are gonna make the economy. They're gonna be like jet fuel for the economy, but the tax cuts and all this money are gonna allow more people to have more money and get them out of essentially the poverty state, or what would be considered low income. So that would really disqualify them from Medicaid. Or obviously people also die, but people are also born. So I'm not sure how they got that number. I'm not saying it's false. I don't know how they got it, but it's a decent estimation, I would say. I'm not sure about that, but it's obviously there's a lot of factors to count into that. But over 10 years, that number might drastically change, because obviously, so many things can happen in 10 years. In just a few months, uh, COVID went from a little leak in a Chinese lab to a worldwide pandemic that shut down the world for about 2 years, and made everybody panic and buy all the toilet paper from the stores. But yeah, we will have to see because the House Republicans propose that. Of course, we don't know if Trump will um, endorse that. And technically, the Democrats aren't actually correct because they said that Trump and Musk would cut it. So they might have been close, but they were still wrong. Um, so they aren't right, at least not yet. I doubt that Trump will endorse that. He might ask for, if somebody does force that into the legislation, then he might just have to ask somebody else, another Republican from the House, to make a new piece of legislation that doesn't include that. We would have to see what that would look like. But that big, beautiful bill is going to have a lot of things. And with that, I leave you with Trump's fat friend story.
I mean, I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine who's a businessman, very, very, very top guy. Most of you would have heard of him. Highly neurotic, brilliant businessman, seriously overweight, and he takes the fat shot drug. And he called me up and he said, President, he calls me, he used to call me Donald, now he calls me President, so that's nice respect. But he's a rough guy, smart guy, very successful, very rich. I wouldn't even know how we would know this, but because he's got comments. Said, President, could I ask you a question? What? I'm in London, and I just paid for this damn fat drug I take. I said, it's not working. He said, I just paid $88. And in New York, I pay $1,300. What the hell is going on? He said, so I checked. And it's the same box, made in the same plant, by the same company. It's the identical pill that I buy in New York. And here I'm paying $88 in London. In New York, I'm paying $1,300. Now, this is a great businessman, but he's not familiar with this crazy situation that we have.